This design is going to work from edge to edge, so I need a clearly defined space. It could be the whole quilt or a block like this. So I'm going to go from one side to the other, quilting a row of clamshells. Now I can almost hear you thinking, but what if they don't fit? Don't worry, I'm going to show you how to squeeze them in there to make it work. So I have my block, I have my seam. All I have to do is start building my clamshells on top of that and decide what size to work with. Since this is a smaller space, I'm going to go with a slightly smaller clamshell, but I could go bigger or tiny depending on how much quilting I want to put on there. So let's do this one. And what I'm going to do is align that marking with the seam, and I'm going to quilt right along that ruler to make my first clamshell. Now, as I'm going around that ruler, I'm being very mindful of kind of pulling it into the center. That's going to help me keep my quilting along the ruler. If I find that I veer off of here because I'm not pulling in, I'm just going to back up and continue on, knowing that I just don't have to make it perfect, I just want to finish it. And I'm going to go all the way around to the other side. Now from there, I just need to reposition and continue on. So I'm going to reposition my ruler, place it, and then continue on. Now, as I approach the end, see, I have my two clamshells. I'm obviously not going to fit one in here perfectly. The idea is I want to land on a full clamshell or a half clamshell. Either one is fine. As I position my ruler here, I can see the halfway point is there. It's not quite close enough. So I'm going to go around here. I'm going to shift the ruler over just a bit, and that's going to help get me to the halfway mark. So basically, I'm kind of fudging it a little bit. If that makes you a little nervous, you can mark it out or pick a clamshell that's going to perfectly fit the space that you're working with. So I'm going to kind of go around and then just shift it over a little bit and pull it all the way in like that. So it ends kind of on a half one. Now from there, I'm going to quilt my next row because it was so great. Let's do it again. Except the next row is going to be offset a bit. All that means is my clamshells are going to end at the middle point of the clamshell underneath it. So as I position my ruler, I can make it come around. And since this one was a little longer, I'm going to stretch this one out a little bit more too, which is going to help make it fit a little bit better. Pull it over just a bit. And then pull it in, and I'm aiming for the middle-ish point. And once I get there, I can just reposition my ruler. When I reposition the ruler, this is not the area that I'm putting on the clamshell next to it. I'm looking at this marking line and using that as my guide. So that marking line is going to line up with that, knowing when I come around, it's going to give me somewhat of a proper clamshell. Coming around. I stop. Repositioning, and this one is going to end on a partial clamshell as well. So you can see I'm starting to build up my rows. Now you can do some fun variations with these, but I actually prefer to quilt them all one direction first and then decide, do I want to add more variations or add more quilting? That keeps me from committing to a more complex design early on in the quilt, because who knows, between here and towards the end of the quilt, I might change my mind. So I'm going to just keep quilting the rows until I hit the top of my area. Now if I'm filling in a block, I'm going to have a defined edge up here. And once I get to the point where I can't add any more clamshells, I have a decision to make. I can either add some echo lines to fill in that space, I could add some different filler, or I can quilt a partial clam. And it really depends on how much time you're wanting to invest in the effect that you're going for. I'll say that most often I'll just go in and add some echoing and call it good, but I do want to show you another way to kind of cut those off. So what I'll do is position my ruler and I'll quilt along it until I hit the seam. So here, as I go to do my next clamshell, once I hit that seam, I'm going to stop, and then I'm going to pull down and travel over to the next side and then finish that clamshell. And it's going to make that clamshell look like it's going behind the sashing, like it's running off the edge. It adds a little je ne sais quoi, don't you think? Or I just think it looks cool. So let me show you what that looks like. And then once I've come over enough, then I can reposition my ruler and then come back and do the other side. So what you're going to get is just a clamshell that looks like it's going behind that seam.